Hi, Steve here, and this is my weekly diet update. I wasn't able to make a video last week or the week before because I was preoccupied with Christmas and family issues, but I should be back this week, maybe next week too. In a few weeks I'm going to have my second child, so I probably won't be doing these for a while after that because I won't have the time. I've been off of work for a week on vacation, so I haven't really been sticking to my diet this week. I was down to 235 last week, but from eating so much and not getting much movement within the last week or so, I'm about 240, 235 to 240, somewhere in there. So I haven't really put much back on, but next week I'm going to get back to my strict diet. For now I'm just enjoying my vacation and spending time with my family. And I've been going to the gym, but I haven't been eating very well. I got a lot of gift certificates for Christmas for fast food, so been enjoying that. Another reason why I didn't post any videos was my computer was acting up. I've had my laptop for about 10 years, and I think it's finally starting to wear out. I don't know if I'm going to take it to the shop or just get a new one altogether. I've been happy with it for about 10 years now, and I haven't really needed anything new. I can't play any more games on it. I don't have room for it because I'm making a movie. I'm making an animated movie on my laptop with really old software, but just a hobby of mine. I've been making a movie and that thing's taken up the whole hard drive on my laptop. And now my laptop is acting up, so I don't even know if I'll be able to finish this movie. That I'm already like 2 years into it, 3 years into it maybe, but I might be taking a break from that because I don't have time to do stuff like that with 2 daughters. But since I haven't been working on that, I have been playing a few more games. I was able to beat Resident Evil 4 for Nintendo Wii in like 2 hours and 37 minutes on professional with all the overpowered weapons. So I've been playing that a little bit, and I've been reading some James Bond books in my free time. Anyway, so a couple weeks ago I went to the Sacramento Gaming Expo, and that was a lot of fun. I didn't bring any money with me. I brought some old junk games. I had some doubles and some cases I had for games that weren't really worth anything to me. I just thought I was going to give them away to people who needed cases for games. I had Robo LSD. I don't know how to pronounce that game. It was a Robo LSD for Sega CD, but the disc was cracked. But I had the manual and the case. But I took that, and some guy really wanted that. He gave me $20 credit at his stand. So I got a lot of good stuff just from taking a bunch of junk in. And I really like that Gaming Expo. I go to these comic conventions and stuff with my wife or my friends sometimes. I can't really get into those because I'm not really into comics. There's some other stuff like movie-related stuff I like. Like I went to one in Stockton, and Richard Kill was there right before he passed away, so I was happy to meet Richard Kill, who was Jaws from the James Bond movies in the 70s. But other than that, I like to go to those comic conventions with all the nerds and everyone dressed up funny, but there's not really anything there for me. But this gaming convention I really like because I'm more into video games than comics. And there were all kinds of video games there. There was a museum set up with pretty much every console ever released. And the 2 fellas that own that one-of-a-kind Nintendo PlayStation were there. And they were letting people play it and touch it. I didn't get to play it because there was a line. But anyway, yeah, that father, I was talking to him, he seemed really grateful to have that opportunity. Like, he was telling me how he gets nice hotel rooms and gets to travel all around the world. He seemed really grateful for that opportunity. So I'm glad those guys have it and they can go share it with other people. It's got to be worth a fortune. I guess it's one of a kind, so who knows? That thing's priceless. Who knows how much it costs, but it was cool to see that and a bunch of other old video games. I didn't have much time to play because my wife was home with my daughters, so I didn't want to stay out all day. I could have been there all day. There were some panels with developers and YouTube gamers. I think they were even showing the Angry Video Game Nerd movie on a screen there. But then there were all kinds of video game sellers and booths set up everywhere. And I did pick up, with the assortment of junk I brought to trade, I did pick up some games. And like I said, I didn't spend a dime there, but I feel like I came home with some good stuff. I got Super Street Fighter 2 for Sega Genesis. I didn't have this one. I've always played the Super Nintendo one, but it's good to have this one now so I can play it with the nice little Sega Genesis 6-button controller. And then I got this Double Dragon for Sega Genesis. And this, I guess, is an unofficial release of Double Dragon for Sega Genesis. I never even knew about it. It's pretty much the arcade game. It might be a little bit different, but from what I remember, it's pretty much exactly like the arcade or very close. It's kind of awkward to control the way the guy moves around, but I had fun with this. I actually beat it. That's the first time I ever beat Double Dragon. I don't remember it being so short, but I guess it is. And then I had some leftover credit, so I got this Silent Hill Downpour. I've never played this, but I like some of the older Silent Hill games, so I thought I might give this a try sometime if I ever have time. And then I got the Street Fighter Alpha Anthology. So I'm happy to have that on PlayStation 2. It has all of the Street Fighter Alphas on there. And then a Gym Fighter, some puzzle game. But anyway, I'm happy I came home with all this good stuff, and I just took a bunch of junk in. And old games I had doubles of. I felt bad taking $20 credit for that Robo LSD game that was cracked, but the guy seemed like he really wanted it. I think I probably could have got more for that online. I think it's sought after just a case, but whatever. Anyway, so this week I'll be sharing my Nintendo 64 collection. I actually have two of them. One of them I got for my wife when we were dating. I got that for her. And then her brother had one, an orange one. And he's grown up and he gave it to me because I can't grow up. But he grew up, so he gave it to me, even though I don't have time to play it. Anyway, I'll show you my games down here. Here's Clay Fighter 63 1/3. That's a silly fighting game with the claymation characters. I have some wrestling games. Here's WWF WrestleMania 2000. The label's mostly gone, just take my word for it. And WWF No Mercy. WCW versus NWO World Tour. Oh yeah, dig it! These are my favorite wrestling games to ever come out, the ones for Nintendo 64. Other than WrestleFest and Superstars at the arcade, I think these are the best wrestling games. And then WCW versus NWO Revenge. This is probably my favorite one on This is probably my favorite wrestling game on Nintendo 64. There's a lot to do on that. Here is Rainbow Six. These games are really hard for me. I think this was my brother-in-law's. Quake 2 for Nintendo 64. I was never really into first-person shooters. I picked this up for cheap a long time ago. Fighting Force 64. That's like a beat-em-up, a 3D beat-em-up game. I never really got into that one. Hybrid Heaven. This is kind of like a sci-fi adventure RPG. Whenever you run into an enemy on this, it turns into like turn-based combat. And then you select what move you want to do. You can do all kinds of like pro wrestling moves to these aliens. Or you can box them out. I couldn't really get into it, but I respect it. Resident Evil 2. The Nintendo 64 version is my favorite version of Resident Evil 2. I have two of those in case one breaks. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I've only played through it once before in my life. I try to play it again, but I don't have the time. This is a really long game. It's very time consuming. It feels just like all the other Zeldas that came before it, only brought up to the 3D world. A big epic, deep world, like very immersive world, like all Zeldas were. Zelda for Nintendo was way ahead of its time, I thought. And this is probably, for its time, it was ahead of its time too. This was a big open world adventure, puzzles, dungeons, everything you want from a Zelda game. I think it transitioned from 2D to 3D perfectly. This is probably my favorite Zelda other than the original. I had a lot of fun with this. I never got it until later on, like around the time the PS2 was big. My brother had a Nintendo 64 and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, had a Nintendo 64 and I had a Nintendo GameCube. And all three of us were simultaneously playing through this game through the course of a week or a month. My brother and my wife had it on Nintendo 64 and I had that Master Edition one for GameCube. But we were all playing through at the same time, so we get together and talk about how we progressed and how to get through these puzzles or whatever. So we were pretty much all playing it through at the same time. And then when we got together, we'd all played it once, but this was a really fun experience. Here's Tony Hawk Pro Skater. I was never really into these. My wife liked them a lot, and my brother. Doom 64. I was never really into Doom. I thought it was, I always liked it, but it wasn't really my favorite. But I think I picked that up for cheap. Back in the discount bins when GameStop was getting rid of all of their older games. That was back in the day. Cruisin' USA. This is a pretty fun little racing game. Command and Conquer. I was never into these games where you had to use your brain. My wife likes games like this. She's smarter than I am. .1080 snowboarding. This isn't really my type of game, but it's pretty good. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. That's a pretty fun racing game. Star Wars Rogue Squadron. That's a shooter. GoldenEye. You know, for being a huge Bond fan and liking video games, I was never really into this. I like to watch other people play it or maybe play some of that deathmatch here and there, but I could never get into this. I liked it because it had all the classic characters on there on multiplayer, and the game itself was pretty fun, the single player mode, but for whatever reason, I was never really big into this. I'm glad a lot of people like this game because it got Bond more popular with mainstream, with kids and everything, so I think we got a lot more better Bond games because of this, so I appreciate this game. And then Tomorrow Never Dies. This was one of the first ones by EA. Star Wars Shadow of the Empire, that's one of my favorite Star Wars games. This one is pretty good. One thing about these first-person shooters I've noticed, it's kind of awkward to play them now because we're used to the dual analog on newer games. But I've noticed if I hold the controller like this on the first-person shooters, and there's a setting usually on the games where you can use like that. You can use the D-pad to move your character, and then with your right hand hold the trigger handle, and then you could look around with this and fire with the trigger. So if you play like that, it feels like how a modern first-person shooter would feel. So I would recommend if you play these old shooter games, put it to the setting where you can use the D-pad to move around, and then your right hand to use the analog stick to look around, and then you have your trigger back there, so it feels more like modern games. Anyway, and then I have Perfect Dark here. My brother-in-law gave it to me in the case. This is one of the games that really showed off the power of the Nintendo 64. You can't play the campaign mode without the little memory expansion. I have the memory expansion here in Nintendo 64 my brother-in-law gave me. My other one didn't have it, so I couldn't play a lot of games. But anyway, that's about it. So hopefully I'll get back next week with another video and I'll be hard into my diet again. And I should be doing these a couple more weeks, and then my second daughter will be born, so I won't have time for this anymore. Maybe I'll try to squeeze one in here and there, because these videos have been giving me a lot of motivation to keep going with my diet. This is probably the best I've ever done with a diet. Pretty soon I'll be back to what I weighed like in my early 20s. I was up to about 270, 280. I was getting really fat from just sitting around being a slug, and the only activity I got was going to work. My job is kind of physical, but it's not like exercise, so I wasn't getting proper movement. I was just sitting around being fat for about 10 years, playing games and eating fast food. But now I'm starting to get healthy again, and these videos have been helping me stay motivated, so I'll try to squeeze one in here and there, but I don't think I'll have much time with my 2 daughters and my wife recovering from having a baby. So I'll try to make a video here and there in the future. Next week and the week after I should be able to make one. But after that, my baby will be here, and then I'll have a toddler and a baby to deal with, so I don't think I'll have time to play games or talk about games or anything. So anyway, so I'll see you next time. Bye.